Hi, this is Ms. Park, and today I'm going to show you how to do a probability experiment using Google Sheets. So let's go to Jamboard for a second and just talk about what we're going to calculate. So what we're going to do is we're going to simulate, so we're going to pretend that we're tossing 3 coins. Okay, and we're going to look at the different outcomes that you can have when you toss 3 coins. Now, when you toss a coin, you have 2 possibilities. Okay, so if you toss 1 coin, it's either going to come up heads or it's going to come up tails. So I'm going to use H for heads and T for tails. So there's only 2 options, H or T. Now, if I toss 2 coins, the first one is going to be a head or a tail. Okay, so that's the first coin. The second coin can also be a head or a tail. So if the first one was a head, then the second one can be head or tail. And if the first one was a tail, the second one could be head or tail. So what are my outcomes? In the first example, when I was just tossing 1 coin, I can have head or I can have tail. But here when I'm tossing 2 coins, I can have a head and then a head, so HH. I can have a head and then a tail, so HT. I can have a tail and then a head, so TH, or a tail and then a tail, so TT. I have 4 outcomes. So in this first case, I had 2, let me write it correctly, 2 outcomes, and over here I have 4 outcomes. Those are 4 possibilities. Okay, now let's see if I toss 3 coins, how many outcomes I'm going to have. So I'm going to toss 3 coins. My first one is going to give me a head or a tail. The second one is going to give me a head or a tail for each first one, right? So the first coin has already been tossed, and for each of those outcomes from the first coin, I have 2 outcomes for the second coin. But for each of the outcomes of the second coin, I have 2 outcomes for the third coin. So I'm just going to write them all out. Tail, head, tail. Okay? And so now how many outcomes do I have when I toss 3 coins? I can have, so here's the first possibility. My coins could all come up heads, so I could get HHH, right? 3 heads in a row. Or I could have heads, heads, tail, HHT, okay? Or I could have heads, tail, heads. So I'm just reading them in order from left to right. Or heads, tail, tail. Okay? Or I could start with the tail and get this one, tail, heads, heads. Or I could have tail, head, tail. Or tail, tail, head. Or tail, tail, tail. Okay? And so how many outcomes is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 outcomes. All right, so now I have 8. Let's talk about probability for a second. What are the probability, if I toss 3 coins, what is the probability that they're all going to be heads? Okay, so that would be this one over here. So we write it like this. The probability that there are 3 heads is, well, there's only one way to get 3 heads. It's HHH out of a possible 8 outcomes. So the probability is 1 over 8. Okay, what's the probability of getting no heads? So in other words, all 3 tails, right? That's only this outcome over here, and there's only one way to get that. So that probability is also 1 over 8. Now, what's the probability of getting 2 heads? Right, so let's look at all the outcomes that have 2 heads. This one, and this one. So there are 3 ways to get 2 heads. And what's the probability of getting 1 head? Is this one, and this one. So also 3 over 8. So now we have our probabilities for each of these outcomes, okay? And this is called a probability tree diagram. Okay, and tree diagrams, sometimes they look like starting at the top and going down like this, right? Like that, with having branches, or they could go side to side. And often with probability, we go side to side just so that we have more space on the paper. Okay, so that's how you would do it in paper, figure out. And so what we have figured out here is called the theoretical probability. That's what the probabilities, that's what we're expecting the outcomes to be, because mathematically, that's what it should be. Now, when we actually toss coins, we might not get exactly these outcomes. Okay, so now we're going to go to Google Sheets and we're going to simulate this in Google Sheets. So let's go to Google Sheets. Sorry, go Google Sheets. Okay, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to put a little legend on top. I'm going to say heads, I'm going to call it equals 1. And tails, I'm going to call it a 0. Okay, just because with Google Sheets, I want to be able to add numbers. And so if I put H and T, I can't add things. And let's make a column for coin 1, coin 2, and coin 3. Okay, so these are my 3 coins. Now, how do I simulate tossing a coin? So tossing a coin is random. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a function in Google Sheets called Randbetween. And Randbetween is going to choose a number between 2 numbers that I give it. So because I only want zeros and ones for heads and tails, I will choose a number between 0 and 1. And that's how I show it. And look, it chose a 0 randomly. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is, remember that little blue button from when we did the art? That little blue square that turns into a plus? Well, that allows me to copy the cell over, and it's going to copy the formula Randbetween 0, 1. So that coin 2 is also a random number between 0 and 1. And I'm going to copy the same thing into coin 3. So you can see that this is my random coin tosses. A 1, a 0, and a 1. A head, a tail, and a head. Now notice that the coin 1 used to have a 0 and now it's a 1. That's because every time I touch these cells, it's going to recalculate the random number. So you're going to find them changing. They're going to change every time we touch them. So now let's say I want to toss this coin 20 times. And I see that I've already used line 1 and 2, row 1 and 2 for heading. So I'm going to have to go, if I want 20 times, I'm going to have to go to row 22. So that's 20 tosses of coin 1. And all I'm doing is I'm dragging the little square so I can copy the formula down to here. And there's 20 tosses of coin 3. And there I have it. Okay, so those are my random tosses. Now, what I'd like to do is add them up because I want to see how many heads I have. Now, if all the tails are 0, then when I add up all these numbers, whatever number I end up with is going to be how many heads I have, right? Like let's take, for example, row 5. Row 5 has 3 ones, which means it's 3 heads. So 1 plus 1 plus 1 should give me 3. Whereas row 2 has only 1 head. So 0 plus 1 plus 0 should give me 1. That's the number of heads. So I'm going to write over here number of heads for each of these. Okay, new formula is adding these the cells in this row so I can see how many heads there are. Anytime you start a formula, the formula starts with an equal sign. Equal sign means don't put into the cell what I'm typing. It's a formula, you need to calculate it. So we're going to use a formula called sum. So you just type sum, open the bracket, and then with your cursor, select what you want to add. So I want to add these 3 numbers, and look how it fills in A3 to C3. So here's A3, all the way to C3, it's adding them. Okay, I'm going to close the bracket and hit enter. And now it gives me the sum. Notice that these numbers on the left, coin 1, coin 2, coin 3, keep changing, right? Every time I work with them, they change, right? Because it's going to keep regenerating a random number for each one of them. Okay, so that's my formula to add them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and copy this formula to every cell in this row E. Okay, and so that we have the sum of the coins. Right? Look what Google Sheets does. Remember this one was A3 to C3? This next one is A4 to C4. It knows that we're on row 4 now. And same thing, A5 to C5. So it's not always calculating the sum of the first of row 3. It's calculating the sum of whatever row it's on, right? So by copying the formula, it actually knows which row it's on, and those are the ones they add. Okay, almost done. Now what we have to do is we have to figure out how many of each 0 heads, 1 head, 2 heads, or 3 heads there are. So I'm going to make 3 new columns. So this one is 0 heads, 1 head, 2 heads, and 3 heads. Okay, and now I'm going to count. So I'm going to use a new formula, and so I'm going to start with an equal sign. And this new formula says this. I want to count in this column, column E, how many have 0 heads. So I should get 2 because it's these last 2 that have 0 heads. Now remember, once I type in the formula, it's going to recalculate, regenerate random numbers. So it may not match to this. Okay? The formula is going to say this. Count how many zeros there are. And we're going to use the formula called count if. So what we do is this. We say count if anything in row E. So row E anything to row E anything. So watch what I did. I did E colon E. It highlighted the entire, I'm saying row, column E. Okay, so I'm going to count everything in column E. And what am I counting? Comma, I'm counting zeros. I want to know how many zeros there are. So I'm going to hit enter. It says 2. Notice all the numbers have changed, but it's true. There are 2 zeros in row E. Okay, so there are 2 outcomes that came with 0 heads. Let's go with 1 head. Okay, I'm going to copy the formula from the previous cell, but I got to change it because here's the formula up here. Yes, I'm counting in row E, but I want to count the ones. So I'm going to change that 0 to a 1. Now it tells me, no, what happened? What did I do? Row E. Look what it did. It went to column F. Okay, I got to make sure it still says column E. So I'm going to fix that. Right? Remember, it knows where you are, so it follows you. So the fact that I've gone to the right by a column, it thinks that these numbers in row E are actually in row F. Because I've gone right by a column, it's going right by a column. So we have to be very careful about what's in the formula. Let me drag this to all of them. I got to fix this one. This one should still be counting row E, so I'm going to fix the formula. And I want it to count the 2's. And this one should also be counting row E. Notice how it keeps moving to the right, because I keep moving to the right. Okay, and here I'm going to make that counting the 3's. All right, so now it should be correct. All right, you notice that the most common is 2 heads. And 1, it didn't work out. Let's check 1. Yep, there was a mistake in 1. Yeah, check all your formulas carefully. All right, so 0 heads. 0 heads should be counting row E, looking for 0. So I'm not sure why I must have typed them in backwards somehow. But let's check the formulas. Counting row E, looking for 0. We're looking up here at the formula. Okay, counting row E, looking for 1's, counting row E, looking for 2's, and counting row E, looking for 3's. And look, there were no 3's in this case. Okay, but of course, if I make a change somewhere, it'll recalculate. So let's see what happens. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this information here, and I'm going to create a bar graph. So I'm going to go Insert, Chart, and boom, there it is. Okay, it made me a chart of the findings. And remember what we said? We said that the probability should be 1/8, 3/8, 3/8, and 1/8, right, from our Jamboard, right? These are the probabilities that we're expecting. So let's calculate the probabilities from here. Let's use Google Sheets to calculate. So the probability of getting 0 heads is this number 2. Oh, look, see, it just changed my bar graph. It changed all the values because I touched the cell. It's going to keep doing that every time I make changes. So now, in this cell over here, I want the probability of getting 0 heads. This number G3 tells me how many came up with 0 heads. So what I want to calculate probability is that I want to take G3, so I'll put an equal sign to say there's a formula coming, G3 divided by 20, because 20 was the number of coin tosses. Okay, and this one is going to be H3 divided by 20. And you get that probability. I wonder if I copy this formula over, will it do it correctly? For this one, it did. No, hold on. No, it didn't. It said H3. I wanted to say I3. Okay. And then this last one should be J3 divided by 20. So I'll just type it in. Equals J3 divided by 20. Okay, and now I have all my probabilities. All right, now how much is 1/8? Right, 1/8 was, here was our theoretical probability. It was 1/8 supposed to be. And can I get that in a decimal? Let me go equals 1 divided by 8. Let's see what it does. That didn't look right. Okay, not sure. Oh, I think it's trying to include them in the chart. Okay, that's not good. Anyway, 1/8 is 0.125. 3/8 is 0.375, so we're close. This is 0.375, which is close. And this last one is 0.125. Those are the theoretical. So they're close, but not quite. We're going to need more. So let me take this, and instead of rolling 20 times, I'm going to roll 200 times. Okay, so I'm going to go right to line 202, and that would be 200 coin tosses. And let's see how it changes everything for us. So I'm going to go to 200. Let's go 202. Okay, so I'm going to do this with all my 3 coins, and then I'm also going to do it with my total. I have to recalculate that total, and then we'll see what happens. All right. Now notice all I'm doing is I'm using that little blue square to copy the formula over. I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, this is the one with where it's adding them. Okay. A little bit more, 202. That's it. Okay, and now let's compare what the graph looks. Let's see what the graph looks like now. Okay, I'm just going to write here. Let's put the decimal here. Theoretical probability. We said 1/8, which is 0.125. 3/8, which is 0.375. Notice how it keeps changing. This is 0.375. Now you should be finding something very wrong with this spreadsheet now. How are these numbers so big like that? They should add up to 100%. They should add up to 1. Why are they like that? The reason is I haven't fixed my my formula. It's still dividing by 20. We don't have 20, we have 200 now. Right, so there we go. So I'm going to fix that one, make it 200. I'll make this one but divided by 200. And this one divided by 200. And there we go. All right, and now you can see our probability is getting very, very close to the theoretical. And it should be that the more times we toss these coins, the closer our experimental probability, let me put here experimental probability, it's going to get to our theoretical probability, right? We want these numbers to come closer to the theoretical. All right, and that's how you do a simulation and compare the experimental and theoretical probabilities. All right, it comes in 2 parts. It comes with the calculation of the theoretical, usually using a tree diagram or a chart, and the simulation, which runs the experiment in Google Sheets. Okay, good luck. Thank you for watching.